Welcome back to VADA Live. I'm your host, Dan Carrigan, and today we're joined by a guest with NADA Academy. He's actually an instructor and an expert in the area of talent and talent management, Steve, if that sounds accurate. I'm joined by Steve Brazill, who again is an instructor at NADA Academy. Steve, a lot to get through in our discussion and a few questions for you, and really just talking about talent in dealerships, perhaps how to attract it, retain it, how processes work, everything and all the above, really with the intent of talking long-term success. And that really is what we're looking to drive into today. Steve, welcome to VADA Live.
Dan, thank you. Good to be here with you.
Appreciate you taking time, Steve. And I'd love to know as an initial question to start about your background in the automotive industry and really what led you to talent management. What is it about this universe that's so amazing and fascinating and perhaps impactful to you?
Well, you've touched on an important point, at least from my perspective. Early in my career, I started off in the field with what was Pontiac division, but transitioned over to retail fairly young and was able to buy a dealership at a pretty young age. And I say buy, but I stole it. But the story on that, the reason I was able to steal it was it had been closed and out of business for 6 years. So I had to breathe life back into that store. And on the day that I signed the papers with General Motors, I was a staff of one. And I had to stand up a functioning dealership in like about a week's time. And as you might imagine, finding the right talent and enough of it and to be able to do that in a week's time was a challenge. You might guess from my gray hair that there's a cause and effect relationship there. But so talent management became a very important topic to me very early in my career. And it wasn't a matter of choice. It was a matter of survival.
Wow. What is it about that survival piece that makes it so important? I understand the sentiment what you're saying, but why is this so vital?
Well, because as a staff of one, I couldn't do everything that had to be done in a dealership. And so you either find the people or you end up doing it yourself. And I just had to learn how to find the people. So it's something I paid a lot of attention to. It's certainly not anything I came into with any special expertise. It was, necessity is the mother of invention kind of thing. And I had to be attentive to it. I had to watch and learn best practices and try to adapt them to my situation as quickly and effectively as possible.
For those, and this may be a great launching point, Steve, learning in real time. I know there are formal programs you're part of, NADA Academy, which we'll get to. But for those that have perhaps the mandate or forced to do this in real time, do you have any recommendations for folks in that area?
Learn from your peers. I mean, there are 16,800 approximate dealerships, rooftops around the country. And there are some who do an amazingly good job and some who don't, and we can learn from them. But even most of us fall somewhere in the middle on that spectrum between amazingly good or amazingly not so good. But most of us are doing a few things right anyway, and we're doing a lot that's right. And if we just keep our eyes open, and especially today when it's so easy to get on the internet and take a look at stores around the country, we don't have to drive there anymore. We can look at their virtual presence. There's a whole lot that we can learn from the things that they're doing and either go, ouch, I do that too, and I should probably stop, or, hey, that's a great idea. I want to try to adapt that to my situation.
As far as retention, I'd like to get to that. What are the mistakes dealerships make that you have seen or perhaps personally encountered when it comes to keeping top talent?
Yeah, that's a great question. And from my perspective, we make several mistakes. One is, we're so good at putting out fires in stores, and it seems like that's what we do all the time anyway, right? And the best situation, when there's a fire, you want to put it out now and move on to the next fire to put out. And that's not necessarily the best way to approach bringing talent into the store, because a lot of times we end up with an opening and we're so quick, we're in such a rush to fill it that we don't always make the best hiring choice up front. We hire the wrong person for the role. And then once we hire them, because we've been scrambling to fill that position, we want to get them productive as quickly as possible. And we don't always give them the training that they need to succeed. And, sometimes we give them the keys to the car and we don't teach them how to drive. And then we wonder why we end up with a car wreck.
Anything dealers can do if they find themselves in that situation, either with a hire or they're approaching making a hire right now, little things that can help?
Slow down, number one. The old bit about, measure twice, saw once. Slow down. Be sure we're making the right hire. Make sure we communicate clearly and effectively to them what our expectations are. Make sure that we expose them to our culture, because every store has its own culture. And if they're comfortable with our culture, they're much more likely to stay. If they're not, then they're much more likely to leave. And then take the time to onboard them. Onboarding is something that we tend to underappreciate in dealerships, and what we think of as onboarding is really more orientation. We give them some forms to fill out, some employment forms, and we tell them where the restrooms are, and here are the light switches and that kind of stuff. And onboarding well done is something that really can take several months or even up to a year, because that's where we make them a part of the organization and the culture. And we give them reasons to stay with us because they're now part of a team. They're not just an employee in an organization, in a business entity. They're part of a team. And they tend to stick a whole lot better.
And Steve, you had said, I love this quote or the sentiment you have shared publicly, that you said opportunity is everywhere in automotive retail for those willing to put in the work. What advice do you have for dealers trying to build the culture of which you just spoke that attracts that type of drive in talent and hires?
Wow, that's a good question. And there are a whole lot of ways to do that and do it well. And a lot of that comes actually back to the culture of the store. What is your particular culture? How do you communicate that? It needs to be something that starts at the top with buy-in from the dealer principal, general manager. It needs to be something that's clearly communicated to everyone that we bring into the organization. And everything we do needs to be congruent with that culture and with that vision. We can't say one thing and then have people see that our behavior models something else. And it's not easy. It takes time, and not everyone that we hire is going to be comfortable with the culture. So sometimes we need to back away from a mistake, or have them back away from us if they feel they made a mistake joining our organization, and that's okay. That gives us another opportunity to find maybe a better fit. So it's highly variable from store to store, depending on the dealer's vision, top management's vision, and what the culture is.
And with that, just really can vary from store to store. Does that present any type of opportunity to perhaps tailor what you're looking for or your vision, or is there really something there dealers can say, okay, I can make this my own, I can right size this easily?
Yeah, that's a good point. I always like to find competitive advantage in the marketplace. So I like to watch and see what my competitors are doing. And very often I can find some weak spots in the way they approach this that I have an opportunity to exploit and turn to my advantage. When it comes to hiring people, if I do a better job of recruiting, if I do a better job of hiring and interviewing, if I do a better job of onboarding and developing my people and retaining them, I get a tremendous advantage in the marketplace. The other side of that is if I see my competitors doing something that's looks like a good idea, or they're doing it better than me, then I better play catch up, or they gain advantage at my expense.
And Dealerships are not alone in hiring. Speaking of hiring writ large throughout multiple industries, are there ways they can stand out as, we'll say, just an employer of choice for positions?
Well, yeah, there are a number of things that we can do. One of the things we advocate is doing a digital marketing audit of, we spend a lot of money on marketing, digital and otherwise. And there are a lot of ways that we can turn that to our advantage because we have a big footprint in our communities. There are a lot of ways we can turn that to our advantage by putting a message inside of a message so that we can piggyback, in effect, why it's good to work at Steve's Motors and piggyback that on top of our marketing to sell vehicles and sell parts and service, because we're out there with a big presence in the marketplace anyway. And there are a lot of ways that we can incorporate images in those. We can incorporate some subtle messages where we're letting people know this is a great place to work, and see our people in the background. They're having fun, and we don't have to say it. We just want to be sure that the people who are watching the messaging can also see that. And we're constantly pushing that, because some of the people who are seeing that messaging on a vehicle today are people who might be in the marketplace for a job in 2 years.
Appreciate that insight, and it's really fascinating. You often reference this quote that we found, and it's, if you're not serving the customer, your job is to be serving someone who is. How does that mindset apply to dealerships? We're all in the business of serving customers, and we have people who work in the back of the store who don't often see customers, and that's okay. That's fine. But, they need to be helping the people who are helping customers, because that's not an easy thing to do, serve customers and do it well. And we just all need to be attentive that's what pays the bills, that's what pays the salaries. And if you're not somebody in a customer-facing role, you've got to be ready to help the people who are at the drop of a hat and make their jobs easier. NADA Academy, Steve. I know training for some is an option. Can you talk to me a little bit about NADA Academy and those, and perhaps why having opportunities and taking up and really having programs in place can help in this area for dealers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a career-changing kind of opportunity on a variety of levels. One is, we go through Parts Week, Service Week, vehicle sales, financial statement, things like that. And so many of us who come into this business, we pick up strengths in particular areas, but not necessarily across the board. So that exposure to these ideas are really crucial. I like to ask people in my courses a simple question early on, and that's, where do managers come from? And don't tell me the stork, because that's not really the way it works. All too often we go to someone and we say, congratulations, Dan, you're the new parts manager, because the parts manager blew out this morning. So we give Dan a field promotion, and that's a good thing, because Dan knows he's worked on the counter for 2 years, and he understands the parts numbering system and how to process orders, and he knows the difference between a clean core and a dirty core. And that's good, but all of a sudden we've just made Dan the CEO of a business unit that might be a multi-million-dollar business unit. And whoever taught him about how to be the CEO of a business unit? And who taught him about the people thing? Because now all of a sudden he's in charge of some people. And, we're giving people responsibilities without always training them up. And so we look around in our stores and we have all these people who are really good at certain things, but whoever gave them the formal background to help them be the complete package in whatever it is that we want them to be. And even if they are good, most of us learn a whole lot of things. We absorb a lot of information and experience throughout a lifetime. And that's a good thing too, but it's a little bit like stuffing things into your closet. And after a while, the closet gets full and it's a little bit disorganized. So even if you're an expert on things yourself, it can be useful to come along and unpack that closet and have some people help you reorganize it a little bit more efficiently. Because some of that stuff you put in there 20 years ago, and you can come away with all the things that you already knew before you got to the academy. At least they're now maybe more accessible and a little bit better organized. Sorry, that was a little long-winded, but
it was a really great response, Steve. The we'll say the concept of me rising to a leadership position is kind of concerning, but I appreciate you putting that in there for context and using that as an example. As far as just opportunities, where do you think teams often fall short when it comes to talent management?
Being impatient, hiring too quickly, putting people into roles that they're not quite ready for. And then along with that, there's this thing we do in dealerships where we think that coming up with the magic pay plan is like the Band-Aid for everything. We hire the wrong person, we don't give them enough training, but we feel that because we give them this whiz-bang pay plan, that all of a sudden that's going to turn them into a superstar. And then we wonder why it doesn't meet our expectations and, people leave. We need to slow down. We need to hire the right people. We need to give them the right training. Pay plans are important. Got it. But it's not the cure-all for everything that ails us. And this gets scary, if I can make this point too.
Sure.
Collectively, as dealerships in the U.S., we employ about 1.1 million people. And that's an impressive number because we're a big deal in our communities. But when you consider that our overall turnover rate is about 46%, that suggests that about 460,000 people a year are leaving a dealership and going somewhere else. And we tend to focus on the cost of replacing those people, which is tremendous. We really, really hurt ourselves badly by saddling ourselves with that cost. But I think that's the tip of the iceberg. I get concerned if we have 460,000 people a year leaving our dealerships, what were they doing the day before they left? I mean, they were counting our cash, they were managing our assets, they were talking to our customers, and they were whispering sweet nothings into the ears of their coworkers. And how much damage can they do on the way out the door 460,000 times a year?
Wow. What do you think that means in terms of impact?
I think that means that there's a whole lot of opportunity there for us to do a whole lot better. And doing a whole lot better actually translates into bottom line. I didn't come into this field of talent management because I'm a warm and fuzzy guy. I'm not. I do it because there's a clear, bright line between this and the bottom line for the stores.
There's a question I wanted to ask you, Steve, too, as far as talent management in the various approaches. You just shared yours as amid just various ways you can lead. How can someone develop that and find that authentic leadership, talent management voice of theirs?
You have to see the value. Number one, if you don't see the value, then you're not going to put the effort into it, just like with so many other things that we do. But if you do see the value, and the bottom line value, not just the people value, but the bottom line value to the store, there are so many good examples out there to learn from, and there are so many bad examples to learn from. And so it's basically an awareness kind of thing. If you're aware of the impact, the positive impact you can have, or if you're aware of how much damage you can do by not doing the right things, I don't know how you can help but not learn from watching the people around you and watching yourself, seeing what you did that worked and what you did that didn't work, and resolving to be better the next time.
Compensation. How should dealers be structuring pay plans as they look to recruiting and retaining folks? Wow.
Good question, and I wish I had a good answer to that. Again, there are 16,800 roughly some dealers, so about 16,900 different ways to do that. And my understanding at this stage, as I look back over what I think I've learned over the years, is how we pay our people really doesn't matter as much as, did we hire the right person? Did we give them the right training? And are we paying them enough that they can feel good about what they're doing and put their own talents to use? And if they don't have the drive and the pride and absorb the culture and believe in being a good performer, I don't think a pay plan is going to do that. It's not going to draw them across the line. They either have that inside them or they don't. So if we hire the right people and we pay them well so they can feel good about working for us and what they're doing, that's probably more important than coming up with a really highly complicated pay plan and thinking that's going to motivate the wrong people who don't have the training.
I appreciate that insight. Looking ahead, what trends, hiring, talent management, all the above should dealers be looking out for?
Increasingly competitive marketplace, more and more tools that allow prospective employees to consider who they're thinking of going in and interviewing with or applying with before they even actually raise their hand and do so. Interesting stat is something like 45% of Gen Zers research a company on YouTube before they even come in and apply. So, how many times have we sat down and looked at our own YouTube footprint? Go to YouTube and put the name of your store into the search and see what YouTubes come up, and they might be yours and they might be things that other people made about you. But that's part of what people are seeing before they come on in. And we might not be getting a look at the right people if they're seeing things online that lead them somewhere else.
And Steve, is maybe one final question. Is there one thing you would like to leave dealers with, be it advice, insights, and those tuning in across the state of Virginia? What's that one thing?
Slow down. Slow down. Make sure you're hiring the right person. Make sure you're taking the time to make them part of your team, your culture, and not just teaching them the technical things they need to know about doing the job. And then onboard them effectively, and don't treat it as something that's a 2 or 3 day process, because it can take several months to make them a functioning part of your team. And if they don't feel like they're a part of the team, you know what you're going to get. It's a transaction, right? I work here Monday through Friday. I get paid on Friday afternoon. End of story. That's all I care about. If that's what you're looking for, then it's easy to do that. But the people who come in and they care and they feel like they're part of the team and they want to win and help you win, takes a little bit more effort. Slow down.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate your time. Just for those tuning in, you were joined and hearing insights from Steve Brazill, who is an Academy instructor at NADA. Steve, appreciate your time. Thank you. And thanks to everyone for watching VADA Live. I'm Dan Carrigan. See you next time.